Okay, a slave to people. You're a slave to a certain person if you're trying to focus on that person to avoid that particular person. The only way, if you're a slave, if you're focusing on avoiding a certain group of people like bullies or troublemakers, if you're avoiding bikers, there's bikers that hang out at the liquor store. So I'm not going to the liquor store because the bikers are there. Um, I have to look around and be hypervigilant to avoid bikers because bikers cause trouble. You're a slave to the bikers because you're focusing on the bikers. You have to focus on the bikers to focus on avoiding bikers. If you try to keep your eyes peeled for the bikers, you're avoiding them. And you got them on the brain because you have an image in your mind of what a biker looks like in order to be able to avoid the biker in your mind. Whether you're doing what the bully says in school, when the bully says, give me your lunch money, and you're giving the bully your lunch money, you're doing what the bully says and you're a slave to the bully because you're giving him your lunch money. The bully says, move out of my seat. You moved out of the seat. That's typically being a slave to someone, letting yourself be a slave to someone. But the other way of being a slave to someone is focusing on the person to be able to avoid them, being hypervigilant to avoid the person. If you live your life centered around that person to avoid them, and you're living your life and you're not making the plans, hey, I want to go to a campground and go camping. I can't go to the campground because there's a bunch of loud rednecks there. I can't go. It's you've become a slave to the people by living my entire life. Now, you can avoid certain places, you're not a slave. But, if you just say, I'm not going to go to liquor stores after dark, fine. Don't go to liquor stores because bikers are there, fine. You're not a slave to them. But if you're not a slave that way, but if you're a slave, if you're constantly keeping your eyes peeled, I'm looking for a parking place to park in where there's not a biker gang parked next to me in the parking place. I have to avoid them. If you're to the point to where you're keeping your eyes peeled to avoid certain kinds of people or avoid cops or anything else, you're become a slave to it because you got your eyes peeled, focusing on looking out for those kind of people. You got those people on the brain. You're a slave in your mind. See, I'm a slave in my mind some ways, but I don't want to be a slave in my mind. But anytime you focus on something, you admit you're afraid. I'm afraid of biker gangs. I'm afraid of biker gangs. If I focus on biker gangs and let them control my thoughts, whether focusing on trying to avoid them, there's nothing wrong with avoiding biker gangs. Or gangs, street gangs. You can avoid street gangs, but don't have them on the brain. Because when you have a street gang on the brain, they're in your brain. Because you're focusing on looking around to see and you ask yourself and you think about it in your mind, what does a gangbanger look like? Does a gangbanger wear a toboggan hat over their head? Do they wear their pants low down on their hips? What do they do? Do they wear lots of baggy clothes? What do they do? Are they missing teeth? Do they have gold rings? What do they do? What do bikers look like? Troublemaking biker gang people. What do they look like? Do they wear black? Do they wear muscle t-shirts? Do they wear leather? What? Blue jean jackets? You've got this set of characteristics in your mind, and you're looking around with those people in your mind to be able to avoid people with those characteristics. You may avoid problems that way, but you're becoming a slave because you're not living to do what you want to do. If you want to go to the motorcycle rally, go to the motorcycle rally if you like motorcycles. You can't just live your life to focus on the other people. You have to be able to get other people out of your mind long enough to do what you want to do. Be sensible, be safe, avoid things where there's going to be potential problems. If you don't fit in with people, stay away. But you've got to be able to get those people off the brain long enough to think about what you want to do. That's why taking sabbaticals and taking times of being a hermit is good, to be able to get these people off the brain so you can think about what you really want out of life. That's what I had to do to be able to decide to be transgender. I had to get away from these people long enough to decide that I really wanted to be transgender. I had to be able to get away from people, get alone and think and find myself. If you're constantly focusing on, wow, I'm one step closer to fitting in with people. Wow, I got the cool clothes. I've got the cool hairstyle. I'm learning popular music and popular slang that people use. I'm focusing on the slang people use. I'm focusing on the music people listen to. I got a new haircut. Oh, I'm learning how to say what's up. I'm one step closer to fitting in. I mean, if an idol in your life is fitting in, if fitting in is a god in your life, you're a slave to fitting in because you're focusing on fitting in. You're not free to be yourself, your authentic self. What makes you confident and happy is you have your uniqueness as a person. We're unique in our uniqueness, and that's what made Prince who he was, Michael Jackson, Madonna. They're all unique because they have their uniqueness. We have our unique quirks and our weirdness and quirks and odd things about ourselves that make us unique and odd. But basically they make us odd and unique. And we got to accept our uniqueness and the flamboyance of your uniqueness. I'm going to flash my confidence to everyone because I'm going to flash my uniqueness to myself. You know that there is a rapper that was Lil Wayne, is actually little because he's not very big. He's Lil Wayne. I mean, think about Eazy-E. He was a short rapper, a small rapper. People are what they are, you know. We just got to